everyone, I'm Dave Thomas, and today I am building the Roto Rocket from Estes. Now this is classified as a beginner rocket, and in fact I think somewhere on here it says it's an E2X. It looks fairly complicated, but it actually goes together very simply, pretty smoothly here. In part because the complicated bits are all molded plastic and they go together really easily. So let's go ahead here and we will find our instructions and make sure we have all our parts. Alright, so hanging out of here we've got the decal sheet. These are self-adhesive. Okay, we have two body tubes. Now this is the main body tube here. The launch lug is pre-installed. It is pre-finished in kind of a pearly white. And then the shock cord is already installed on this as well. Okay, we have a smaller body tube. Alright, then we've got our nose cone, our helicopter blades, and some little teeny parts in there, don't lose those. Alright, more blades. Alright, then we've got a small parts package that contains the fins. These little rubber bands are for extending the blades out. We've got this little clear sticker here that's going to be a reinforcement for the launch lug. And then we've got our fin can, motor mount, motor retaining ring there, and a parachute. Okay, and then we've got a tube coupler, and if you can't find this in your kit, check the tubes. Sometimes they get stuck up inside there. And then finally, this little spare parts package here is the mounting for the blades. So all the blades will tie into this. So coming back here, let's make sure we have everything. Alright, fin can, blade stop, blade hub, that's all in that little package there. Retainer, coupler, body tubes, nose cone. Okay, and the reason they have two sets of blades in here is that they're set at different pitches. So depending on your wind and conditions and such, you might want the 6 degree versus the 3 degree blade. Okay, laser cut cardstock. I have not seen that. Let's see if it's in this little bag here. Ah, here we go. That thing right there. Looks like maybe it's a bulkhead. Okay. Blade pins, rubber bands, blade pivots, parachute. Okay, looks like we have everything. So I will clear most of this out of the way and we will get started. Our first job here is to assemble the fin can and motor mount. Alright, so the motor mount is actually integral to the fin can. And if we look carefully here, on one side it's got little pins, on the other side it has little holes, and those will mate together like that. Alright, now to put these together, the instructions show using a tube type model tube type plastic model cement like this one here. You can also use a brush-on cement. I recommend a medium viscosity one there. I prefer the brush-on for most things just because I've got a little more control with it. Okay, now we are going to apply glue to all of these edges here, including the little holes. Alright, but we don't want an overabundance of glues. That might interfere with other parts here, and especially on the threads, just give it a very light coating. Alright, then go ahead and put those back together. And I'm going to hold this for about 30 seconds and then set it aside to dry completely before we can put the fins on. While the glue on the motor mount fin can is drying, we can do a couple of other things here. So one, if we look on, this is page 2, and we're going right in the middle here. So the first thing I'm going to do right here is just put this reinforcement sticker on. And this is going to go on the launch lug here. So what we want to do is first just get close to center as we can. Alright, we'll just touch that down lightly and then we can check to see how close we are. It's close enough. Alright, so when you got it where you want it, go ahead and press down just on the plastic there of the launch lug. And then when we get to the sides here, what we want to do is take a fingernail and use that to firmly adhere our sticker there onto the corner edge here, and then lay the rest of it down. And this helps to minimize the amount of trapped air in there, so that as much surface area as possible is the sticky stuff. Okay. We won't do the rings quite yet here, as we need fins on for it. On the shock cord, they want us to do a loop here. Alright, so we're just going to tie an overhand loop, also called a water knot. I get this to go together. This does not have to be really big, just big enough for the shroud lines to go through. Alright, but we do want to tighten that knot down really well. Okay, and if you have a lot of excess out here on the free end, go ahead and cut that back to about 1/4 inch or 5 to 6 millimeters. Okay, and then we can also take just a little bit of white glue or wood glue and apply it to the knot. Now don't use plastic cement for this, as it'll melt the rubber. Just a little tiny amount, and then we'll just kind of work that into the knot here. And this is just to help keep it from unraveling. Alright, we'll set that aside to dry. Something else we can do while the glue is drying is go ahead and assemble the parachute here. Okay, now most of this work is done for us. The shroud lines are already attached. So just open up the sheet like this, and then find all of the shroud line loops and gather those on one finger here. With your other hand, take the center of the parachute sheet, and now we're just going to pull everything tight. Now somehow that got all tangled up. I'm going to try that again. Come on, shroud lines. There we go. Okay, that one, and that one, and that one. That looks better. Okay, so the idea here is to get as close as possible to having all the corners down at the same level. And so with the shroud lines in one hand, you can move these back and forth a little bit. You can also let the plastic slip somewhat until it gets close. All right, and I think that's about as close as we're going to get. All right, with these pre-strung ones, sometimes they're not always exactly where you think they should be. All right. Once you have that, there are now two ways to mount it. Alright, one way, and the way they show in the instructions, is to pass the shroud line loops here through the loop that we just made in our shock cord. And then we reopen the loops here, pass the whole parachute through that, and then pull it tight. Now I'm not going to pull it tight because I don't want to do it this way. Alright, but that'll tie a knot down on there like they show in the instructions. Okay, now if you've seen any of my other videos, you know that I like to use snap swivels. Okay, so here's a snap swivel. You can get these at just about any place that sells fishing tackle. The size doesn't really matter a whole lot for a low power rocket, as long as the snap part, this part here, will fit over the nose cone eyelet, or in this case the shock cord itself. So I can actually use a fairly small one for this. Okay, now this is going to go like we did, so just gather all the shroud lines together here, and go ahead and bring all those corners down again as much as we can. And now we're going to gather the loops here into a little tiny bit here. You gotta pinch them together. And these are going to go through the swivel side, this side here of the snap swivel. Like that. Alright, and I'm always keeping tension on the lines here, but this is our kind of last chance to make sure that everything's fitting the way we want it to. Okay, so then we're going to take the entire snap swivel, pass it through the loops of the shroud lines, pull those downward, and then we're just going to let that tighten around there. Alright, one last check. One of those is a lot longer than the other, but, well, not a lot, but enough that it's kind of relaxed there. But it's not worth cutting and retying it. So I'm good with that. But if you do need to readjust, simply loosen this knot and try again. Once you have it where you want it, then go ahead and just apply another little drop of white glue or wood glue here. And work it around. And then we'll let this dry as well. Now the advantage here is you can easily open this up, take it off of the shock cord in this case, put a bigger one on or a smaller one on, whatever you want to do there, without having to untie or cut the shroud lines. Theoretically, having the swivel here will also keep the shroud lines from twisting up, but in reality, the bearing on here is not a ball bearing, it's just bare metal basically, and so it doesn't work that well for that purpose. Okay, but it does allow us to change the chutes out really quickly. I'm going to set this aside to dry as well. My fin can is dry, and so now we can put the fins on. So down here, alright, they are not using any glue. Okay, so these are just go on like this. Alright. And these are feeling fairly tight, but as long as they go on and clear this area here, so the aft end of the root edge of the fin should be flush with the top here of the screw area. We don't want it hanging down, alright, so we don't want it down here, or the retainer ring here will not stay on. Okay, now you can leave it like this. If you'd like it a little bit more reinforced, what I recommend is using a very low viscosity plastic cement, like this, and just brush it into the seams here. And if you get little bits of plastic cement, looped like I just did there, up on the fin or on the fin can where it's not supposed to be, just leave it alone and let it dry. Don't try and wipe it off. This stuff will dry to be almost unnoticeable as long as you don't disturb it. Alright, I'm going to let that dry for just a few minutes before we put it onto the body tube. Alright, now we're going to attach the fin assembly to the tube, And in the same area of the instructions here, it's going to go into the mounting of the blade stop here. Okay, so this is this G-ring. Okay, this is in the small parts package here with all the green things. Alright, so this is our, almost lost a pin there, don't lose those pins. Alright, so this is our blade stop, and this is going to go on the forward end and be in line with the fins. And to do that, we're going to make a mark here at 3/4 of an inch from the top of the tube. Alright, or 1.9 centimeters for the metrically inclined. I'm going to go with that. Okay, so here I'm just going to make a pencil mark. Right there. Okay. Now, to mount the fins, they recommend the tube type cement, and I am going to go with that. The alternative is you can use a gel type super glue. You can also use epoxy if you want to go through all the mess with that. I don't. Alright, whoop. This is why I don't like tube type cement. It's always coming out. Alright, so we're just going to run a bead of this right inside here. Okay, now when we put this on, in its final resting place here, the launch lug should be centered in between two of the fins. Okay, so I'm going to stick this in, I'm going to rotate it back and forth a few times to seat the glue well. Alright, now I'm going to just aim down there and center the launch lug between these two fins. Now, back up at the other end, we're going to go ahead and take our shock cord and stuff that back in for the moment, just so it's out of the way. Alright, now this stop is going to go over the tube. Now, if that's causing difficulty, take your thumbnail or fingernail and just run it around the edge like this, and this just kind of bends the forward edge there just a little bit. Alright, now when we get this into place, it's going to be on that line right there. Okay, I don't know if you can still see it. There's my line right there. And we're going to put some glue in a ring right at that line there. And so we're going to push through the glue as we put it to the line once more. Here again, you can use either the tube type cement or the medium viscosity brush on, which I'm going to use here. Also, you could use a gel type super glue here, which I actually prefer when I'm trying to put plastic onto non-plastic. I think you get a better hold that way. Alright, so now we're going to push through the glue till we get to that mark once more, and now we need to very quickly align it with the fins. Alright, so look down the length of the body tube, and you should have your fins centered along with each of these little rises here. Okay, so that looks pretty good. I'm going to let this dry once more. While the glue is drying on the main part of the rocket, we can do the nose assembly here. So the first thing I'm going to do is find the coupler here before I do anything else. And I'm going to mark the center of it. So if we take a ruler here, alright, this is 1.5 inches long coupler. So I am going to make a mark here halfway, that'd be 3/4 inch. Alright, that way I've got this ready once we've done all the other parts here. So I'm going to mark one end of this aft on the inside so that I don't forget which end is which. Okay, and then this thing here, so this is our blade hub, and it's got these hollow areas here. It's stopped on one end and open on the other. And so this is going to go on the aft end like so. Alright, and I already did it backwards. Alright, so it's going to go on the aft end like so. Alright, yep. Now this may actually be easier to put on. It's a little bit tapered inside. So if you start at the forward end and push it down, it's probably going to be easier for you. And we are going to add some plastic cement on here. So I'm going to put a ring at about that point. Here again you can use either the tube type cement or the brush on. And I think I'm going to use the tube type for this one, because it can fill space at least a little bit. Now again, we don't want too much, we just want an even bead here. If we get too much, it'll start trying to dissolve the plastic, or we'll get a whole bunch down at the edge, which we probably will anyway. Alright, so just move this on down until it is flush with the body tube there. And here, if you have a little bit of excess glue sticking out, go ahead and just wipe that off. Alright. Okay, now we're going to take the blade retainers here, and these are going to fit into these slots. Now for this one, I am going to use the brush on cement. Again, mainly because it gives me more control, and I don't want big globs of glue here. Alright, so what we're going to do is just put a little cement inside there, and then this is going to just slide into place, and we're going to do that for the other two. Checking back to our instructions here. Okay. Next we're going to go down to our coupler, so I'm going to allow this to dry off to the side. Now remember, we had that little piece of cardstock. Alright, this should just pop out. Okay, and then those little nubs you can either take off with a hobby knife or some sandpaper. I'm going to use a emery file here. Just so those don't get in the way later. Okay, and we are going to glue this onto one end of our coupler like that. Okay, so for this part, we're going to put glue right along the edge here. Okay, and then this is going to form a bulkhead here. And we don't want all this excess glue anywhere. So just wipe any excess glue away. And then one final check. Make sure we're flush all the way around. And once more, we're going to wait for glue to dry. Alright, well, the coupler is drying. We can also put the nose on now. So this is just going to go straight into here. It's fairly loose, so I am going to use here the tube type cement. This is also a good place for gel type super glue if you have it. Okay, so just a nice even bead along the inside. This next step is optional, but I like to use it just to help hold. So here you can take some sandpaper, or again I'm using this emery board. Alright, but just really quickly sand this around. And all I'm doing is just roughening the finish, and this gives more surface area for the glue to attach. So we just insert that, kind of rotate it inwards to seat the glue well. And then we let that dry some more. While glue is drying, we can go on to assemble the blades here. And we have two sets, and they go together in the same way. So I'm just going to open up one set here for the moment, set the other one aside. Okay, now be careful, we do have little parts in here that we're going to need. Alright, so if we look closely here, we've got a hole, and that's actually not what we're going to work with. Then we've got this little indentation here, and this is what these little guys go into, so it's going to fit in here. Make sure you got it in the right direction, like this. So they need the little projection here should be facing down along the length of the blade, and we are going to put these in place with some plastic cement. Again, you can use the tube type or the brush on here. Again, I prefer the brush on just because I've got more control with it. So we're going to apply some glue there. Alright, then we insert the little tab, push that down to seat it, and then we'll go on to the next ones. Now we'll do the same thing with the other set of blades. I started with the green and went to the blue. You can do this in any order. I'm going to do this part though off camera and come back. Here I have both blade sets done, and I'm going to let these completely dry. So allow them to go for at least 20 minutes before we go on to the next steps, because when this is all finished, there's actually a considerable amount of tension applied to these little hooks here. And so we want to make sure that we get a good firm grip on those with the plastic cement. That up. Now, while these are still drying, we're going to go ahead and insert the coupler here. Now, we're missing a little bit of information. I've gone through the whole thing here. So we've got the bulkhead in place, and it's showing that oriented like this, and then this going in. But that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I guess it doesn't matter a whole lot. Basically what this bulkhead is doing is just preventing ejection gases and potentially the recovery system from getting shoved up inside there. So it would make more sense to me to put it in this way. And so if we take our upper part here, all right, that would prevent any possibility of the parachute getting stuck up in here. Whereas if we put it in this way, it could get lodged in there. And I don't see any particular orientation for this. I'm going to go with what makes sense to me here. Excuse me. Now, if any of you have built this and you can find a reason why it should go in one way or another, please leave a comment. And not only I, but the rest of my viewing community here will be able to find out. Alright, so I've just added a ring of white glue. It's actually white wood glue here. And then we're going to insert this to our halfway mark. Alright, so I'm just going to rotate it back and forth as I do, and right to there. And once again, we're going to wait for glue to dry. Now that all the glue has dried, we can do the final assembly here. I'm going to do this with the blue blades. You don't have to, you can use the green ones. Just make sure you use the same color for all of them. Alright, now these are going to fit in here so that the two little holes match up. And that's where these little green pins come into play. Alright, so we're going to put this in there. And as far as I can tell, the pins can go in from either side. Like that, and so that allows them to rotate there. And we're just going to continue this all the way around. Okay, so now that should look like this, and if you flop this over upside down, all of those blades should fall into place. Now they do give us some extra pins there, so my kit came with 6 and we only need 3 of them here. Keep those handy in case you lose one of these pins. Alright. Now the last part here is to install the rubber bands. And they give us some extra ones of these as well. My recommendation though is go ahead and put these on now so that you can see how they fit and everything. But actually when we're just displaying this, I will take the rubber bands off simply because if you leave them on there, they are all stretched out all the time, and they're going to be more likely to break than when you actually go to launch this. So I would just keep them in a little baggie or something with the rocket, but not installed. Okay, so that's going to try and keep all those fins in an upward position. I'm going to set this aside for just a moment. And we're going to come back to our rocket here. Okay, now if you're actually ready to fly this, I would recommend putting 3 to 4 pieces of loosely crumpled recovery wadding in here, or the equivalent amount of dog barf or blown cellulose, whichever you prefer there. And if you don't have the parachute already installed, go ahead and do that. Okay, so on mine I'm going to take my snap swivel here, open this up, Just attach that to the shock cord. Alright, fold the parachute, and my current favorite method of doing so is to fold the sheet in half in such a way that all the corners line up. If I can, this will cooperate here. Alright, so if I fold it in half, we should have two center corners there. Alright, and then out here on the sides, we'll line those ones up as well. Okay, and then we take one side and fold that over so that its corners are now overlapping with the center ones. And do the same thing with the other side, so that now all of the corners are more or less overlapping here. Take the shroud lines, find about the midway point, and pull that up onto our kind of kite-like parachute now. And if you have the snap swivel installed, leave it hanging outside the parachute. If you tied this directly, leave about an inch of shroud line exposed there. Alright, then we're going to fold the edges over to form a spike and enclose the shroud lines. Take the tip of that spike and bend it down onto the corners that are all overlapping now. Alright, and then I like to fold the edges inward like this, giving us an almost cylinder-like appearance. Okay, then we're just going to take the shock cord and stuff it down inside. Alright, and then when we get to that final spot there, we're going to put the parachute in, stuff it downward. Alright, we want to make sure that there's nothing in the way there of our bulkhead. Okay, so now we're going to put the two pieces together. Alright, and that should go fairly easily there. If it's really difficult to get that on, it means you've probably got the parachute or shock cord or something stuck in between the side of the the side of the coupler there and the tube. Okay, now we're going to fold all these downward. Alright, and we're going to rotate this, so if you can see in there, those little pins need to line up with the holes. If you kind of wiggle this back and forth here. Alright, this is actually the most difficult time since we've got all these blades that want to come out. Alright, there we go, there we go. There. All those are lined up. And so now when we push this all the way home, alright, that keeps the blades down. Okay. So structurally, that's all we need to do. We do still have the decals left. Alright, so we've got these here. And if we look, alright, if you want to go by the suggested placement, then the Roto Rocket decal is going to go along the body there in between the fins, or the blades I should say. Alright, and then the Estes stickers can go just about wherever you want. Okay. Alright, so we've got our launch lug here. So the Roto Rocket would go about there. I'm going to go ahead and pull this off. Alright, and that's what it does when the ejection charge goes off, is that's going to push that forward end away, and that in turn allows those blades to spring up. Okay. Now, one of the problems that we have with this type of decal is that once they stick, they don't want to come back up again. And I'm going to get a stand here. Let's see if this one is tall enough. Alright, just to give myself some more room to work. Alright, so we want this to be kind of centered along here. I'm just going to lightly touch this down. It's also a good idea to wash your hands before doing this. I just washed my hands before I came in for this segment. It helps to eliminate the fingerprints and stuff. It won't get rid of it completely. Alright, check to make sure that's straight. Looks reasonably so. Alright, so if it is, then go ahead and take your finger and just go down the middle of it to begin with. And then move from the middle to the side edges there. And just work that along to press it down. The last two decals are just Estes logos, and so I put one of them on the green blade here, and then the other one I put on the blue blade, but you won't be able to see it till the blades deploy really. You can see it right down in there. Alright, so from nose to blades to fins, that's my Roto Rocket. Okay. Altogether, this took about 2 hours, including glue drying times in there. And I recommend letting this set and have some final drying time for about an hour before you try and launch it, simply because there is a lot of glue in this rocket. I hope you had fun building this with me. Have a great flight and a safe recovery, and please stay tuned for more of my videos.